People ask me all the time. It would challenge me, in fact, and I mean, in comments and replies to things I put out on social media and so on. It's a niche element, but it's still noticeable. People ask what I'm really going to do about all this. People say, yeah, it's all fine to talk about it, and we've heard you complain about all the trouble in the world, on TV and on your digital media, but what are you going to do about it? They ask. They want me to come up with actual solutions to the problems. I mean, some clearly want me to front some sort of revolution. Me, to take up the first pitchfork and be at the head of the queue, heading for wherever. Some people want someone else to take the broken thing and fix it for them. That's not an instinct I have, but that there's a measurable niche in contact with me that think that someone like me is the person to fix it. I mean, for a start, I'm not a politician, and I have zero intentions of ever being one. I've said it many times. To me, the political world, the political arena, is utterly corrupt and beyond redemption. I wouldn't touch it with yours. If politics was a house, you'd have to condemn it and knock it down, build a new one and live in that. Even come up with a better idea of what a house is supposed to be. I concede and celebrate the fact, actually, that I have a voice and I've been using it to the best of my ability, and I'll continue to do so. I've been speaking up, giving my opinions on what I think's wrong and how and when I think it went wrong. I've also said what I wasn't prepared to do in the past and what I won't do in the future. That's me personally. That which I can directly control. I didn't take the jabs. Neither did any of my immediate family, my wife and kids. I didn't wear the silly blue face nappies. I mixed with family and friends during lockdown, flouted that. I hugged anyone and everyone. Anyone that would accept a hug got a hug. And when it comes to the future, I won't accept a digital ID, and I won't use a central bank digital currency. And that kind of stance will work, but will only work if enough people refuse to have anything to do with it. That's a numbers game, but that's all it is. If enough people buck that trend, if it becomes a trend, then it'll die on its arse. And I mean, I know, and I've said that the so-called climate crisis is a hoax. It's a con, first and foremost, to make money for those that stand to make money from it. And it's more than that, it's a means to control the world population by every which way. We were and are being lied to about the war in Ukraine and about the mass murder in Gaza. Gaza. The Gaza Strip. I mean, by now, tens of thousands of people are dead. Most of them, women and children. Hardly any Hamas fighters at all. And that we celebrated Christmas with our own families while all that blood flowed in the Holy Land, and that the countries of the apparently civilized West still ignore it, while the politicians of the West still broadly applaud it. What's going on in Gaza? Well, words must fail me on that one. I've said all this, and as far as I'm concerned, if more and more people say it too, each one of us acting on his or her own behalf, then that's the solution. Not least because, in reality, it's the only one available to people like us. You could talk about elections and votes, but I think that's a busted flush, as we say in the land of Robert Burns. I think in the short to medium term, voting is not going to get us out of this. And I have ideas about what to do when we come to the next so-called election, but I'll deal with that then. But it's plainly obvious that even now, we're short of the numbers to force the necessary change. Because still, a lot of people are talking. God bless every single one that's raised his or her voice, on whatever scale, large or small, just talking to family and friends, or if they've got access to a wider platform. But we still don't have the numbers, and we know that because the situation hasn't properly changed yet. And the architects of the destruction of our society are still out there, doing their thing, are still there. The Blair thing, the Blair creature, is still out there. Most recently being touted as a post-war mediator in Gaza. What can you say? The man who is Prime Minister of the United Kingdom held hands with United States President George W. Bush and lied the country into an illegal war, who has done as much as any living person to destabilise the Middle East and to bring death and misery to millions. And yet his name is used in a sentence about peace. It makes my gorge rise. I put a line or two out on social media this week about all those celebrities and silverback journalists, you know the ones I mean, those that had spent decades trading on their machismo, their hardman reputations, but who, when the madness started, when a real fight came along for the first time, when they might have used their positions to defend the people of this country and the wider world against the scamdemic, against the lockdowns, against the jabs, they either kept their heads down and their mouths shut to protect their brands and their businesses, or else they joined the chorus, singing and dancing as cheerleaders of the state. And I see their faces pop up on TV now when I accidentally turn on a terrestrial channel for a minute, and they're still posturing the same old way. They're still punting their latest self-serving crap. And I know that as long as people keep watching and listening to them, that the solution will remain out of reach. I can't bring myself to look at them. In the absence of enough people calling out the obvious, dismissing and disregarding the guilty, the solution to our problems will remain out of reach, because the madness goes on and intensifies. There are clearly identifiable dynasties of lies abroad, in the land and the wider world. The power to lie into our faces with impunity is being handed down through the generations of families. Vanessa Kerry, daughter of Joe Biden's so-called climate czar John Kerry, the John Kerry that has flown the world on private jets, enriching himself beyond the dreams of avarice, at the same time as spreading fear and prophesying the end of the world if the little people, you and me, don't radically change our lives. The John Kerry that denied ever having owned a private jet, just moments before a US congressman confronted him with the fact his family sold a private jet immediately after news broke about his hypocrisy. Well, Vanessa Kerry, daughter of John, was last year named by the World Health Organization as its first Director General Special Envoy for Climate Change and Health. How are we to escape the madness when it's now an inherited characteristic? When daughters inherit it from their fathers? Just as the US has its political dynasties, the Bushes, the Clintons, the Obamas, so it has dynasties dedicated to perpetuating grifting as a way of life. Talk of the Jeffrey Epstein client list is everywhere again. Not for the first time. It pops up again like a bad smell, but it's everywhere again. Feverish anticipation, the promise of hearing this or that famous name listed among those that had found reasons for multiple flights with the world's, most famous dead paedophile, for multiple visits to his private island where youngsters were raped or otherwise abused. And yet we've heard it all before. A person has to wonder if it's all just smoke and mirrors, and that rather than openly publish the details, we're just to be intermittently bamboozled again and again with yet more rumour What bemuses me most of all, in that context of being asked over and over to come up with the solutions to all this, is how much more obvious it all has to become before the whole twisted, evil edifice falls down under its own obscenely bloated weight. I mean, there's enough evidence out there already to sink the proverbial battleship. The wrongdoing, the malevolence, the corruption, the malice aforethought. It's in plain sight and has been for years. The World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization, they've talked and keep talking about how much we, the people, will and must lose, and how much they, the corrupt, stand to gain. The venal detritus that serves as our political class continues to ignore the mounting death toll resultant from all they did, all they and their chums profited from during the past 3 years. And still, even after all this time, too few of us demand they be held to account and ultimately removed forever. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The evil ranged against us is wounded as never before, revealed and exposed as never before. It may be in its death throes, but a wounded and dying predator is at its most irrationally and lethal level of dangerousness, most likely to be at its most unpredictable just before it finally falls. So, one way or another, 2024 looks like being quite the year.